welcome to this latest edition of I Start Wondering Conversations. We're going to explore a really important topic, one that I never thought I'd be talking about at midlife, and I'm really excited to introduce you all to Jenni de Jong, who's I Start Wondering contributor, who got me into this, to be honest. Into this meaning the presence process, not into I Start Wondering. That was Kate Olson's problem.
She got me into I Start Wondering.
Exactly. Okay, we'll get it all straight. So welcome to our conversation. This could be random, but we're going to talk today about the importance of presence, and that's Presence, not Presents. Let's clarify. But it's really something that we don't think about in life. We just kind of go on, or at least I did, go on automatic pilot, dealing with whatever's coming up in life and not necessarily dealing with it well. So, little history. So Jenni and I have known each other since 2016.
16, I think.
We both teach meditation together and teach classes together. But what also happened was she found the presence process, which is a book. So tell everyone and me what got you to the presence process.
Well, I would say that it really started with, like Dorian said, she and I did teach this meditation classes, and it's called Shunjin meditation. And at the time, what really helped me with Shunjin was I was having a lot of anxiety. So in almost every area of my life. And it didn't matter what the situation was, my nerves would come into play. Mm-hmm. And the meditation helped me really with that, to relax my body. But while we were at training together, we were having conversations with other people, and there were senior teachers there. And I was out on the back patio with one of our senior teachers, and I said, Shunjin has helped me so much with this, but I'm still struggling. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know what else to do about this. And so he recommended the presence process. And once I got home, I ordered it while I was there. And then I got home and he talked to me about the breathing, which we can talk about. I started that right away while we were in teacher training, and then got home and started the book.
Wow.
So that's how it began for me.
And let me just say, I had no idea at that time that she was doing this. It wasn't until probably, I found it, I want to say in 2018.
It was probably the next year.
2018. Yeah. So, and I was going through things in my life, and I was like, I don't know how I can handle this. And Jenni said, I have, something that has been really helpful for me. And so I ordered the presence process and went through it, and have gone through it probably 10 times now, if not more. It's a regular occurrence for me, and also for you, I would guess.
For sure, after I first got it, I went through it several times. Like I went through it 5 times, kind of one after another, which you don't have to do it that way.
Right.
But it was so impactful to me that it led to further development. And it was like, you open one door and then the next door opens. But I would say that I've continued to practice those principles. Like it's become almost a natural part of what I do now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you even said at one point that this is a way to operationalize the power of now.
Yes.
So talk about the process.
Yeah. So Michael Brown is the author of Presence Process, and he speaks of integration of emotions. And that's really what the whole thing is about. So, when Dorian was talking about, when you were saying how you were kind of living life just, from one thing to the next, and that could be called having reactions to things. Mm-hmm. And that was what I was doing. That's what the anxiety was. It was a reaction to things. And so as you go through it's a literal, it's like a workbook. Mm-hmm. Where you go through all these different weeks of starting to pay attention to what you're feeling. So as soon as you have some kind of feeling, whether it's, and he says that it comes down, these emotions that come up can be fear or anger or grief. So you start to pay attention to those things. Mm-hmm. And my operational system was to ignore them and to just try to brace and push through. And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
My whole nervous system was heightened. I wasn't very effective. I was burning out, and I was not living life consciously. So to try and integrate these emotions, what he has us do is pay attention. Use life as your workshop. So when you notice that you're being triggered by something, you're asked to notice where in your body you feel that, and then identify what it is. So that can be kind of tricky. Mm-hmm. Because for me, I placed a lot of blame on other people. So if my husband would act right, then I would be better. Or if my kids would do what they're supposed to do, I'd be better. Well, this makes you take responsibility for your life, and you can't say that about anybody when you're in the middle of this process. You have to, and Michael Brown talks about taking responsibility for your life. So by that he means if something comes up, it's about you and not the other person. Mm-hmm. And he actually says, don't shoot the messenger. Right. And then pay attention, well, what is it that came up? Sit with it. We learn breathing techniques, and we non-judgmentally allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. And by doing that, our inner wisdom starts to integrate those things. We're not stuffing things down. Mm-hmm. We're not requiring the body to hold something that requires a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. It just allows the emotions to integrate and then move through.
Yeah, and the other pieces you talk about that I think about, at least my experience on Presence Process. So when I would get triggered, I would mouthing off, either coming back at a person, not in a bad way necessarily, but just a smart aleck comment, or I would go and complain to someone. And Presence Process for me invited me not to do that, because what can happen is you get into this tendency of, I've had this bad experience, so I'm going to go complain to Jenni, and then I'm going to go complain to, this person and this person and this person. And so you're reacting to the triggers. You're not sitting with them and letting it move through you. You're kind of just, in my mind, keeping it alive within your body.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's true. I did a lot of that too. And another thing that is required in this whole thing is what's called containment. That's, that brings up that point really beautifully. Yeah. Because instead of going and discharging our emotion on someone else, which I did a ton of that too, we are encouraged to keep that discomfort inside, but label it for what it is. Mm-hmm. So that person said something that triggered me. It made me uncomfortable. Where is that in my body, and what is it? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe it's fear. So then I get to sit with fear. And I don't get to go and tell everybody all about it. I'm encouraged to contain it. And there's something magical in that. And it's a bit hard at first to do because it's not our first go-to thing.
Right. Right.
But if you kind of trust the process and do it the way it's written, it really changes things. It made a huge change in my internal landscape and how I handle things in life coming at me.
In what way?
Well, number one, I'm not placing myself in the victim seat, well, it depends on who I'm encountering as to whether I have peace of mind. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter who I encounter. If I can start practicing this, and I know that's a tall order, I can't always do that. I'm not saying I do that, but I now have this system, that I can go back and go, wait a minute, I got triggered there. And what was that all about?
Right. I think the other piece for me too that happened in going through the presence process multiple times is that each time was different.
Yes, yeah.
Different things would emerge each time. And sometimes it was, I won't say it was easy, but it was smoother. And then there were times that it was really, really difficult. But that was getting into some really deeper issues within me that I hadn't resolved. I just, I didn't enjoy it while I was going through it. I finished it, but now looking back, having gone through those various iterations, it opened up energy for me because I wasn't stuck in the stories. I wasn't stuck in the emotions in my body anymore. I could do what I needed to do, and I have these reserves now available to me that I hadn't tapped ever before.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, the amount of energy we expend trying to hold these things in our bodies, these emotions that are running us, it depletes us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's as we start to integrate those things and learn the flow of it, we have more energy. Mm-hmm. We have more to give. We're present. We're not hanging out in the future or thinking about the past. We're practicing being right here, right now.
And I think, or at least for me, I found a lot more peace.
Yes.
In life. Not that it's always peaceful, but I now know what that feeling feels like, and I can find a way to navigate back to it a lot easier. Whereas before I'd be thinking, okay, to solve this issue, I need to go retail therapy, or I need to go this or do that, or whatever it might be. And yet I think presence process in a lot of ways is kind of the ultimate self-help, or not only self-help, but everybody talks about caring for yourself. We think about pedicures and facials and retail therapy and whatever, and yet this is so magical in so many other ways.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I think some of those things became a way to run away from me.
Right.
Actually.
Right.
And they're not bad things. Like, I love those things.
Exactly.
As Doreen knows.
Exactly. But it became a Band-Aid.
Yes.
Right. Or a way to just, I'm having a bad day. I'm mad at whomever. I'm going to go shopping.
Right.
And then you've got all these clothes and you have to deal with them, or shoes, or whatever they might be.
Right.
In my case, it's books. But I know. So you've talked a little bit about the breathing sessions. I want to tap in a little bit into your craniosacral experience because you're a craniosacral therapist. Emotions in the body. Talk a little bit about that, because I think the presence process also helps us kind of start moving the energy that we might have gotten stuck.
Yeah, it's a great home program for craniosacral therapy, but it's not right for everybody. So it's been amazing for me. I've seen big changes in my life, but it just depends on where the person's at. And in craniosacral, we really try to meet people where they're at in a very neutral and non-judgmental way.
Right.
So, but in general, with craniosacral therapy, we're helping to release fascial restrictions in the body. So those are tension patterns that we've developed over time, either from injury or, we all have many different things that can happen. We trip and twist our ankle. We have a bad fall. All of those things create restrictions in our bodies. And I had a senior craniosacral therapy instructor who said that many times, once you start to release those structural tensions in the body, there's emotion underneath it. Because we're this one big system. We're not just this body. And we experience emotions, and our culture hasn't really given us any directive on how to work with our emotions at all. And so as a society, we've just contained it for the most part. Most people are kind of just stuffing it down there, not really wanting to look. It's painful. It's hard. We think this is hard. I don't want to look at it. It hurts.
Right.
And that actually creates a restriction in our body. So in craniosacral therapy, we can help release fascial restriction. And while we're doing that, many times emotion comes up, and then we release that emotional restriction, that emotional content that was kind of holding itself. Upledger called it in an energy cyst. When you think about a cyst, it's containing infection. So the body's trying to do its best, but we can help it by actually looking at it and being with it.
Right.
In craniosacral therapy, we help people with that, but presence process helps the person take it one step further. It's like, okay, now I got to go home and I got to do the homework.
Right. Well, and I think the other piece of all of it too is presence process gives us the tools and the understanding to, in moving forward, not add more into our bodies of stuck emotions, because you go, oh, wait a minute, that's, I'm doing it again, whatever that again is, and whatever that is. So instead of just automatically having that same response, it invites us to shift.
Yes, right, exactly. In fact, that's a big clue, is if we're having that same thing over and over, it's like, okay, this is something I need to look at.
Yeah.
If we're willing.
Yeah, and I think too, I had never really thought about it before presence process, but it's kind of much like, what you were saying of, the patterns. I'd had the same situation in general, or the same personality, keep coming back into my life over and over and over again, and obviously it was something I needed to learn how to deal with, because I'm like, why am I getting, the different person, but same energy signature or same archetype? And so presence process gave me the tools to begin to unravel that pattern for me, so that I no longer get myself boxed into a corner when those personalities come in. I know how to navigate around them.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think that's very true for me too. I think each time I did presence process, it had a different signature, in that it was like some life event that I got to practice with. And I had many of those same kind of situations that you're talking about, where the same type thing would trigger me. And that became, I got to where I could really identify that feels so uncomfortable in my body. Like, and I would pay attention to that. And it made me slow down, sit with it, and really, like I said earlier, take responsibility for, this is something coming up inside of me. This doesn't really have anything to do with that other person or that situation. And when we can do that, it changes the outside. I mean, it changes the whole situation, because we're not coming at it from that same triggered reactive response. And that's what I found. I found, more ease in my relationships, and I found that my anxiety, definitely, there were so many changes in that. I never thought I could stand up in front of people and teach meditation like that. You saw me.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, and it just really helped me get to the root of what that was, and then step into some of my full potential, like each of us is here to be, I believe, to add to the peace and the love or amongst each other. Like, we have so much fighting and back and forth. Well, that's, to me, this is some of the answer to that, is that as we start to take responsibility and we start to ask, what is it that's happening in me, rather than blaming someone else, that creates more peace in the world. So it's been very powerful.
So why do you think it's something important to consider doing at midlife or beyond, going through the presence process?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, because, and Michael Brown talks about this in the book, there's these stages of our life that we go through. And, we're born and we're helpless. We have to be cared for. And as we start to grow and to take on more independence, it's almost like we fall asleep in a way. We become enamored with everything out there, and it's designed. We're supposed to do that. We go to school, we learn certain ways of behaviors, we start interacting, with our peers, and our family members certainly form that. It's not until we get into 30s, maybe is even early, I would think. But certainly as we become middle-aged, it's a chance to really start to wake up, and to not be so pulled into all of the things that are out there. To wake up, to start to go, what am I doing here? And how do I want to be in this world? And I think that's important for middle-aged women. I think, I certainly, one of my experiences is, being a mom, and I had totally identified with that, of course. And then, once the kids are all grown and gone, and you're left with, well, what am I doing now? What's my purpose? I thought it was being a mom and a wife and all these things. And actually, there's so much more. That's one role I played, but it just, the presence process helped me to open up to maybe the broader picture of what am I doing here.
Yeah. And I think a lot, based on what you're saying, and I totally agree, for a lot of women at this stage, they're looking at retirement, they're looking at the end of caregiving, or feeling invisible, which Kay Olson wrote about the benefits of feeling invisible. But this is a chance to really build your own self-esteem and really look at yourself and get to know that person inside yourself. I mean, I think, we all think we know ourselves, but do we? Do we really know ourselves? And this, going through the presence process, really gives us an opportunity to really make better friends with ourselves. And we're the only ones who start at birth and go through you die. You're with yourself the whole time. So why not make great friends with yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point.
So is there anything overall, any other major ahas that you've had from the presence process that really you'd like to share?
I think probably there's so many things that are coming to mind right now. I would say that it's been surprising to me how my family life has changed because of me doing this. And I'm not saying because I did it. It's just I was the one who got the book and did it and practiced it. And I feel like it changed some of the dynamics in my family life. And I felt more confident. There wasn't that sense of, I've had this thing for so long of not being good enough. And that's just this like storyline of, that I had completely gone with. And so that was surprising to even discover my confidence. And that you could have confidence without it being egotistical.
Right.
Because that was my hang up. And I think also this whole idea of walking through life asleep and in reaction versus trying to be conscious. I'm not always conscious. I get sucked in and I get triggered, but it feels so uncomfortable now that it makes me go, wait a minute, what happened there? And I need to go back and look at this. And that's been just a huge gift because it changes everything. And you can always go back, and have a redo.
Yeah.
With people too.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other piece too is you talk about that, that Michael Brown talks about, that it still resonates with me. He talks about needs, wants, and requirements. And so needs are like, you need water, you need food,
I need water.
She needs water. Shelter. Those basic needs. Wants are everything else. Type of water, or, I want a book, or whatever. And then requirements, as I remember it, is what the universe brings to you. So maybe, you require teaching a class and realizing you've got anxiety or something that triggers me. Those are the requirements that come through to help you realize that, oh, there's something there to deal with. And that whole typology really made a huge difference for me in going, oh, I hadn't really thought about, I always thought there are a lot of things, we talk about bucket lists, and those are all wants, and we get hung up on those wants. But do we really, really need them? Will they really make us happy? And so for me, it has slowed me down. It, meaning the presence process, has slowed me down enough that I make sure that my needs are taken care of. And then I really sit with my wants now and go, do I really, really, really want this? Or is it just a passing interest? And that's been life-changing.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you brought up requirements too, because that actually was a big thing for me. I think I was just wanting everything to be good all the time, and I was trying to make it good all the time. And it's hard, this life. It's there are requirements, I think. There are hard things that happen.
Yeah.
And that can sound really obvious, but for me, I was just in such bracing and almost denying that, not wanting something to happen, the requirement part, and learning how to manage what was happening inside of me and really sitting and slowing down and breathing, it's allowed me to sit in some acceptance. And that had a huge impact on the amount of anxiety I had then.
Yeah. And I think, all of, the choices that we can make, for instance, I sit there and I think about the requirements, we've got wars, we've got elections coming up, all those things are requirements that are coming at us. But we have our choices of how we're going to interact with media sources. Are we going to get sucked in, to the news feeds or to social media or, whoever the talking head is? Or can we step back and pay attention, yes, but not feel like we have to be losing our peace in this? Can we hold our peace, our personal peace, so that we can ripple that out, as opposed to the stress level of always worrying about what's going to happen next, or, all of the repercussions that can happen that may not happen.
Right. We go down a long list of what ifs.
Wow.
And you saying that reminds me also of a story that Michael Brennan said in the book that is like, that's on the big scale of the world, the United States election and that kind of thing, and then what's going on politically and all that kind of stuff. But then he talks about this story, and this really landed in me, about, being in a grocery store line, and the checker is new and struggling, and so the line is getting longer and longer, and everybody's getting more and more frustrated. And so he pointed out, what if you stopped and you were present in that moment? And you started breathing, and you started not just thinking about your agenda, like, oh my gosh, I've got to get out of here because I've got to da-da-da-da. What if you were really present in that situation and started to have maybe some compassion for the new checker and offered in that moment some peace from inside of you? You're not going to enter into that same little tornado of tension. And then once you get up to the checker, do we look them in the eye and say hello? How are you? And connect as humans? Or are we all in our own world and all in our own agenda and trying to rush about? And to me, that is really profound, because it's how do we do those things in our world day to day, and they end up having an impact in the bigger things. If more and more people were to start to practice that, what a difference it might make on those bigger things.
Yeah, that is huge. That is huge. So what, we've covered a lot. What else? Anything else that you want to?
Well, I think the only other thing, one thing that, we have in the past done study groups of presence process.
Yes.
And
true.
Yes. And we are going to go through it again, And in when you go through the book, Michael Brown is he's like, groups don't work, don't form a group around this. And I really get why he says that. I really do. But the way we've done it, and I feel like it kind of works, is we've laid the ground rules of saying, look, we're not going to get together and talk about all the things that are happening as we're doing this. We're going to really practice this containment thing together. Right. And so might meet periodically and check in, how's everybody doing? we might do some moving meditation, but we're not going to go through all the stories of what everybody's going through. And I think that has served us well.
Right.
And it's actually added some support. Like, you feel, even though we're not talking about our individual things that we're working with, you can feel the support of the group, like we're all doing it at the same time.
Right. And I think, that was, I think, one of those pieces, because you were not sure. You were
I said, no, we can't do this.
We cannot do. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're going, oh, we should do presence process with our book group, know that you can, but it's really not set up for a standard book group, discussions. It's just, for me, it was always lovely, just to know that there are other people going through it at the same time, so I can say, Jenny, it's presence process, and roll my eyes and then go on, but not get into the weeds of what I'm going through. It just is, I found that as just an additional level of support.
Yeah.
And so we would encourage, anybody who wants to do presence process. There are 2 editions of presence process. The one that we use is the latest edition, which is 2010. And because it lays out week to week, it's a 10-week process, with a different theme every week. And then you're invited to do a breathing exercise twice a day for 15 minutes. There's an introduction before you get to the 10 weeks. That really it's like you're walking into an ocean, and you're kind of slowly diving in, but it's setting the tone for you. And then you go through the 10 weeks, and then there's another section that takes you out of it. I think the other piece too, which was a big aha for me, was we think about, okay, week 10, I'm done, hooray. And you are done, but you're not. Because what tends to happen is there's an energetic signature that's going to keep following you through this, the remainder of working through the presence process in the last chapters. And so, there were times when I was surprised when something came up, but I was like, oh, wait a minute. It was just a continuation of those 10 weeks. So that's another piece I would say is just remain present.
Yeah.
So anything I've missed?
I don't think so.
And so we will conclude this conversation on presence process. Again, we would invite you. And if you're interested in joining our book group. Exploration.
Our independent exploration.
We do this book periodically, so we're going to start in mid-May with it, of 2024, but we do this book fairly regularly, so if you're interested, reach out and email us, but we look forward to future conversations, and Jenny's got topics she's going to come, talk to other people about that I think will be fascinating podcast topics. So on that note, have a wonderful day, and thank you, Jenni de Jong.
Thank you, Dorian.